During ongoing pandemic. Oops, sorry.
Oh,
I was just saying, Melissa, that I think that with this lingering ongoing pandemic, one would think that things, streaming from home would be all good, but there's always something that
there
no matter
is.
how much you rehearse, there's always something. But thank you for sharing the trailer, and people can see it on pbs.org or Amazon Prime or YouTube as well.
Thank you. And it was a really fascinating special. And just was wondering what inspired you to create the special and do this trip?
Well, after I think it's been 10 seasons of having Patty's Mexican Table, where I have gone back and forth from Mexico to the US and visiting different regions and really trying to bring a microphone to the different places of Mexico and in the US, not only with people north of the border and the American audience, but also with the Mexican American communities and Latino communities in the US to make these connections and trying to shine a light, into the beauty and the richness of, the US neighbor. And this continues back and forth. I kept being pulled to the border, being a Mexican American with kids that are born now here in the US and that have this double identity, this double nationality, this double culture, and having this tension with, where do you belong, here or there? And I feel like at the border, the communities at the borderlands really, you can be anything, you can be from anywhere. It's a place that's always in between. So I felt very at home, and I felt that it's a place that is so incredibly misunderstood and misjudged and narrowly labeled. And I really felt the urge to go and try to understand it better. And when I went and I tried to understand it better, I'm telling you, I felt so at home. And I just wanted to bring people there without a filter, without an agenda. And I think we really succeeded at that. We did the borderlands, from the Texas-Mexico border all the way from El Paso to Brownsville, and now we're hoping to do the other side of the border from Tijuana to El Paso.
Great. I just saw today actually that there's going to be more of the series in 2023. So I'm really looking forward to that. But when you were filming and meeting people, and it looks like eating delicious food, what's the most surprising thing that you learned?
I mean, everything. I feel like even the food, people think about Tex-Mex in a very unidimensional way, as if Tex-Mex food is just one thing and one kind of cuisine. And I found that Tex-Mex food is so diverse and so rich, and it really changes as you travel through the Texas Mexico borderlands. And there's so much richness and so much diversity, and just it was incredibly humbling to realize that from the food, from the people, from the cultures, what life is like there. People tend to think that the US Mexico border and the Texas Mexico border in particular, it's just Texans and Mexicans. And people don't realize that the border is really a magnet for all kinds of people from all kinds of places. So there's people from Japan, there's people from Haiti, from Cuba, from Syria, from, all different places. And it's an incredibly rich place, full of fascinating results that have to do with negotiations within people of their own identities. And it just opened my mind and my appetite to explore it even further. And I think, the closer you get to the border, the more you understand it. You get a kilometer away and you start to see how it is completely misunderstood. You really, really have to be there.
And when I was watching, I really learned so much, and I really like the story of the Lebanese and family with the restaurant. And I'm like, I never would have expected that on the
Right.
Mexican border at all. So that
And
was very
it was fascinating because they, and their family were telling us how much their Middle Eastern community has in common with Hispanics, how, they have so many common denominators, the love of food, the love of family, how they all work together, and in all these places where these different cultures connect, and you just wouldn't expect it. Even the way that Syrians serve the food and that Middle Eastern food is served. It's just you put the big platters and people just serve. And Mexicans, we do the same thing. And the same thing, it was really fascinating. I don't know if you were able to see the second episode when we're in the Rio Grande Valley and we get to meet this amazing Japanese American family. Well, it's actually Japanese American Mexican. And you have these, incredibly successful, courageous Japanese American cowgirls that have this ranch and they're raising Akaushi beef, which makes for Wagyu beef. And they have this whole history of how they came to America and how, it's not only Mexicans and Americans at the border, it's these Japanese women who are, well, Japanese American Mexican, who are enriching not only Tex Mex food, because now you have these incredible Wagyu beef being used for the most amazing fajitas, but the way they're enriching the culture of the place, it's just fascinating. It's mind blowing.
It is. It is. And in La Frontera, we meet some amazing, strong women. I had to tie that into Women's History Month. And we meet the mariachi, and excuse my pronunciation, mariachi feminine flores mexicanas. And we also meet the owner of the Burritos Cerritas food truck, Patty Alfara, and many other amazing women that you talk to. What do you think it is about the border that have created so many successful, strong women?
Successful and strong women that have learned to survive against the odds every single day. In the backdrop of the strong women of Sarita's burrito truck, you have Ciudad Juarez, which is a city that has been riddled, I think, by one of the most unspeakable times of violence against women. And so I think they've had to struggle and go against many cultural traits and crime and prejudice against women. And so it was really fascinating to see this taco truck ran by women in Ciudad Juarez and being so beloved. And it is an iconic spot, not only for Ciudad Juarez, but people from El Paso cross to Ciudad Juarez to eat those burritos every single day. And they're so proud and they're so beautiful and they're so strong. And and just like Sarita's taco truck in Ciudad Juarez, then we had the mariachi femenil in El Paso, and these girls, many of them live in El Paso, many of them live in Ciudad Juarez, and they train and rehearse every day. And you find at the border where these cultures are clashing and rubbing against each other every second of every day, people really hold on to tradition. So you find that people are really holding on to who they are and their traditions and their culture and their iconic symbols, but they also are able to break new ground. So you would not find a mariachi femenil, a women-led mariachi band in Mexico. I don't think, being Mexican from Mexico City, that is just unheard of. The mariachi is a male-dominated profession, and men are expected to sing and to go out at night. And when a woman is gonna get married, they bring a male mariachi band to ask for her hand. And all of the lyrics and the songs are sang by men, and the lyrics are spoken on the voice of men. And here you have this group of women who at the border are able to say, we are mariachi, we are women, we will wear those suits, and we will wear them with bows and red lipstick, and we will sing louder and stronger, and we're changing the lyrics so that it sounds like we're not singing your lyrics. These are from the female perspective. And so you find these clashing things. They're holding on to the impeccable suits the way they're supposed to be, but they're skirts. And so I found that it's a place where people really hold on tightly to things, but it's a place that at the same exact time, they're really able to transform and break open things and live and breathe different possibilities that would not be able to exist in another place.
And speaking of strong, successful women, how did you go from being a political analyst, which I just found out in the last few days, to being a world-renowned chef? And we also had a question, what inspired you to be a chef?
Well, I have to say, I've always been drawn to food. I've always been a gigantic eater. I wasn't always a good cook at all. I've always been too enthusiastic with seasonings and with salt, especially. I add a lot of salt to food. I love it. And I wanted to be an academic, and I'm the youngest of four, and my three older sisters were in the world of food long before me, and I was the intellectual one. And I came to food later in life after I already had two of my three boys. And I just felt that it was by way of food that I could make sense of myself and my place in the world. And it was by way of the kitchen where I could contribute the most to the lives of others. I felt that I could help a lot more by sharing recipes that could help anyone solve a Wednesday night meal. And I could do that better than writing another academic paper about how to strengthen democratic institutions in Mexico, or how to build better political relationships between the US and Mexico. I really saw the potential in the noble power of food, and I saw, with my own eyes, how food really opens up doors and builds bridges and brings down walls and lifts veils up, and people can just share more who they are when there's a plate of food in front. And I love looking for those openings, for those opportunities where there can be a conversation. And I think there's no better place to have a conversation than when you're hungry and there's food in front of you. You're just more likely to make amends and to see eye to eye and to communicate. So I'm all about the power of food and the stories it can tell. And it can just really help with a new vocabulary, of how people, you may say left or right, or conservative or non-conservative, or Democratic or Republican, and you may not see eye to eye, but we can all say tacos and eat them, right? So it's that which I find fascinating.
Great. And speaking of food, we have a question about what is your all-time favorite thing to eat and make?
That's a hard one. I love eating everything. I'm just such a big eater. I love eggs. I think my favorite meal of the day is breakfast by far. I would eat eggs every single day if I could. And I eat them all sorts of ways: Mexican style, scrambled, omelets, hard boiled, soft boiled, poached, with sauces, non sauces, on avocado toast. I just love eggs so much. I'm in awe of the beauty of the ingredient, of the richness, of how accessible it is, how nutritious it is, how it can stand on its own, and you can eat a soft boiled egg with salt, and it's one of the most exquisite things. But eggs also know how to be a sidekick or how to be a part of something. So the egg will make a souffle puff. The eggs will make crepes be beautiful. The eggs are a binder ingredient, they are a puffing ingredient, so they can be so many things. I'm just in awe of eggs. And aside from breakfast, I think I always have the same answer to these. If I could choose one thing to eat that I would have to repeat every single day, it would be chicken milanesa or chicken schnitzel or just breaded chicken, fried chicken. I love fried chicken. I love mashed potatoes. And I think that's my favorite thing to eat. With chipotle and adobo on the side, I'm served.
Yeah, it sounds so good. And if for some reason you find yourself in Colorado Springs, you'll have to visit this family restaurant called Juniper Valley Ranch that does fried chicken dinners with mashed potatoes and
Ah,
all the sides. And it's so amazing. And they close down in the winter. So I'm like counting down the days for when they're back open. So if you ever find yourself here, I highly recommend that since you like fried
absolutely.
chicken.
Please send me that the name in an
I
email.
will.
I'll make sure. Yeah.
I will. And another question is, what is your process to create a recipe?
So I like to walk two paths at the same time. I really love recreating classics. In fact, my latest cookbook called Treasures of the Mexican Table is all about those heirlooms, those treasured recipes and dishes that have been passed down generation to generation and that should continue to be passed down because they're treasures that are here before us, and they're treasures that should be here after us. So I love passing down those things and continuing to strengthen that chain between generations. But I also love playing with new things. So I love playing with ingredients that I know and love, especially Mexican cuisine. I'm just because it's my thing. So I will make traditional things and find a way to make them the most accessible, the easiest, the most delicious, the most repurposable. And then I love using ingredients that I know very well and using them in new ways. Um, I love exploring with the way tastes connect with each other. So I will just, if I want to play, say, with poblano chiles, I'll start by making like a palette of flavors. Like I'll say when I'm coming up with something new, like I know poblano chiles, which are exuberant, they're a little bit spicy, um, they're very meaty, they're a little crunchy. So that's how I came up with a potato in poblano raja salad. So I'll think about combinations of ingredients that I know work well, or sometimes I imagine that they would work well. And I love playing with that. But I do need to have that balance between recreating things that I love and playing with new things. And I really think that a cuisine can survive and thrive if it walks those two paths, like preserving and innovating. So I'm all for both.
And your latest cookbook, which you just mentioned, Treasures of the Mexican Table, and I've been looking through it. And one of the things I've been doing during the pandemic is making, like, expanding my culinary wings, or so to speak, and making something different and learning new recipes. What one recipe would you recommend for us to make from your new cookbook? because
Oh my
everything looks
gosh.
amazing.
That's hard because there's so many amazing recipes in there. Um, I would say I'm a big fan of the salsa matcha in there because it is so accessible and repurposable. It's a very easy salsa to make. It's like a cross between a wet granola and a chile crisp. And you can use it on top of avocado toast. You can use it mixed with pasta. You can use it over yogurt and fruit. You can use it over hummus. I mean, you can just use it in so many ways. Um, but I would say I recommend that people explore the different moles that are there. When people think about Mexican moles, they think about complex, laborious sauces that require a lot of ingredients to be made. And there's many moles in the cookbook that are just easy and use a handful of ingredients. Um, for example, there's a wedding mole that's a mole that's made with pine nuts and apple, like tart green apples and brioche style bread, and it's really not what you would think of a Mexican mole, and it's so silky and mild and luxurious. And um there's another mole from Michoacan called the catapatua, which I make with mushrooms and chicken, and it's masa thickened, like corn masa thickened. It's really delicious. So I would just say come to the book with an open mind and explore.
Can't wait to try something from the book. And we have a question from Julie, one of our attendees, and she said, my family and I love Mexican food and culture, but we only have visited a few places in Mexico. What one region of Mexico would you suggest we visit if we could only choose one?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that is you guys are asking me hard questions. I'm from Mexico City. Mexico City is my hometown. And I think it's I mean now it's very popular, but people used to see Mexico City as just a way in or out into Mexico and then go to the beach or go to a different destination. And I think that Mexico City is a fascinating place where you can find everything. You can find culture, you can find art, you can find incredible food, you can find food from all over Mexico because it's such a magnet. So I think if you had to choose only one place in Mexico, which is so hard, I'd say go to Mexico City.
And another question is, who do you love to cook for the most and why?
Well, that has to be my boys because I have three boys which are now young men, and they love to eat as much as me, and they're very enthusiastic about eating. But what I love about cooking for them is that they are very open and blunt, and they will really tell me when something doesn't work and when they really like something. So um I am very open and direct and opinionated and really appreciate those same things when I'm giving food to people. I want to hear if they liked it, if they didn't. And I really get that from my boys. And they're always hungry to try the new things that I'm tasting. They're very patient. They will try, if I'm testing something 20 times, they will try all the different ways that I'm making things. Now I've been testing conchas. For the past 2 weeks, I think I've made maybe 20 batches of conchas with different toppings and different kinds of dough. And Juju, my youngest, will just try anything and compare and take notes with me and take them to school. And so we go on these food journeys together. So I think my boys, I mean, I have to say my husband is also a very good eater, and he will also eat anything I cook for him. But I think my kids tend to be more expressive.
And Natalie has, and you can add on to it, a comment. She says that they're from Harlingen, Texas. I hope I pronounced that right. And she said that she noticed that as you move away from the border, the version of Tex Mex changes as you move deeper into Texas? And what are your thoughts on the
I think so
differences?
too. Absolutely. I think that one couldn't count with your hands, the different kinds of Tex-Mex food that exists along the Texas-Mexico border. It's really fascinating. Um, the closer you get to Mexico, of course, I think the closer you get to a more Mexican type of food. But it's really fascinating. The closer you get to the border, the thinner the burritos are, and they tend to have one or two fillings that complement each other. The farther you get away from the border, the more fillings that get tucked into the burrito, the fatter and bigger they get, and the more things that get added on the top, salsas and cream and cheese, and the closer you get to the border, the thinner, the leaner, but the more sophisticated too. I always say that a good taco and a good burrito really has to have a feeling that is so good that it can stand on its own. And I think the closer you get to the border, the more you get that, really good feelings in the burritos.
And I noticed that watching La Frontera, that the first burrito you had, I'm like, that doesn't look like a burrito. Our burritos are like the size of a newborn infant.
Exactly. I agree. I agree.
And Hannah has more of a technical question for you. She asks, when making salsas, sometimes your recipes call for roasting tomatoes, peppers, and garlic in a comal, and sometimes we boil it in water before throwing them in the blender. What is the purpose of each method, and how do we decide which method is best for any dish?
That is a great question. And if you boil the tomatoes and garlic and sometimes onion, you're going to get a softer, less rustic taste in the sauce. If you char or roast the ingredients, you're getting a more out in the country, smoky, rustic texture. So it really depends with what you want. You can have the three ingredients: tomatoes, garlic, and onion. And if you use it all raw, you can have like a raw gazpacho or a pico de gallo, and it tastes bright and raw and unprocessed. If you boil it in water, you get that subtle but cooked taste. And then if you char or roast, you get that more depth of flavor that's like out in the country. So there's not one right answer. You can cook the three different ways and get three different things, or you could char and roast the tomatoes and leave the onion raw. I mean, you really can play. That's the power of the kitchen. And I feel like when I share a recipe, I'm hoping that people will at first follow the recipe as is, hopefully, and see, the result and if they like it. And then I'm really hoping that people will make the recipe their own. And, if they want to add a different kind of spice, or if they want to leave the tomato raw or roast it or boil it. But it's a matter of what ending you want. So you could make a soup, for example. I have a pinto bean soup in the cookbook. It's called a sopa de ombligo, or belly button soup, because I make these masa dumplings where you make an indentation in the dumpling and it looks like a belly button. And these masa dumplings cook in the pinto bean soup. And the pinto bean soup is the simplest thing ever. It's pinto beans, and of course you could use black beans or white beans. It's cooked pinto beans that go pureed, but they go cooked on a tomato sauce, which can have tomato, garlic, onion that can be boiled or can be roasted or can be raw and then added and then cooked with the beans. And you will get a different result that every, if you char them or roast them, or if you just boil them, and it's just a matter of preference. So I recommend that you use that recipe and play with it and see, what the result is. It will be delicious anyway.
Sounds delicious. And Delana asked, she says, it's fun to watch your boys devour your dishes at the end of your show. Do you think any of them will follow in your footsteps or work in the culinary field?
I don't know at this point. I don't know. I know they all love cooking. My two oldest are now in college, and they text me the photos of the things they cook, and they're always sharing recipes and asking me for recipes, and they love cooking for people. And I love that cooking and eating has become an important language for them. But I don't know if they're gonna want to do it professionally. My hunch right now is that they won't. But I don't know. I may be surprised. Maybe.
And then a question about enchilada sauce from Julie. She says that she started making her own enchilada sauce, and she's tried a few different chili powders in the sauce with mixed results. Is there a brand or a type that you would recommend?
Yes. I would say instead of using chile powders or ground chiles, you can use anchos or guajillos that are dried at the store, but you rehydrate them and you puree those with either cooked tomatoes or cooked tomatillos, and I think you'll have a better result.
And is there a weird food combination that you love?
Yes, I love salty with sweet. I love eating chocolate raisins alternated with popcorn when I watch movies. I don't know if that's a weird thing. I really love mixing sweet and sour and spicy and salty. I love clashing tastes of flavors. Something that I love that I used to eat growing up with my dad was a very savory lentil soup topped with caramelized plantains. So you got the very sweet from the plantains and the very earthy, creamy, savory from the lentil soup with bacon or with chorizo. And yeah.
This talk of food is making me so hungry.
I know.
And do you have a favorite avocado recipe?
Oh my gosh, so many. We go through so many avocados here in this house. I grew up eating avocados from Mexico, from the tiny little ones to the large ass ones, and we use them for everything. We use them on avocado toast. We make guacamole. We make avocado soup. We make avocado salads. We tock avocados in quesadilla, in sandwiches. What is my favorite thing to do with avocado? I would say that lately, the thing that I love doing the most is avocado toast. And I top it, I use black bread, the one that has a lot of grains, thin, and I toast that, and then I add a lot of ripe avocado, and then I spoon salsa matcha on top.
It's delicious. Is there a recipe that has been a challenge for you to create or recreate?
Yes, conchas for sure. Bread. I think bread and baking, because I'm more of a savory than a sweet cook. I think I'm not that great at doing precise measurements in techniques. I am more a cook of a feel, a hunch. Kind of a cook, like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So I am a little bit more challenged when it comes to things that require a lot of precision, which is the universe of baking.
Oh, great. Which region of Mexico will you be exploring next?
So we're headed to Nuevo León. We're headed to Norteño land, which I'm actually really excited, Melissa, because I have never been to Nuevo León. I have never been to Monterrey. And I started Patty's Mexican Table, and I started going to the places that I already knew and loved and missed and was very familiar with. And I love sharing that with the viewers. But as the years have gone by, my relationship has changed with my viewers too. Instead of my showing them what I know, they now come with me to explore the things that I'm getting to know. And I love that change. I love the discovering things together. And rather than me showing them what I know, it's like we're learning together about these new things. And the more that I travel and research and eat Mexico, the more that I realize how little I know and how much more there is to know. So I'm just very excited about going to a new place.
And what is your favorite, and I hope I pronounced this right, agua chile recipe?
Ah,
I took French. I'm sorry.
of course.
Instead
No,
of
no, no, that's
Spanish.
perfect. My favorite aguachile recipe is the simplest one of them all. And I ate it in Sinaloa, and they use raw shrimp, but it's shrimp that has just been caught. So it hasn't been frozen and it hasn't been thawed, and it is so fresh that it's almost sweet when you eat it. And they just add a fresh squeeze of lime, crushed chiltepin chiles, which are very spicy and very flavorful, salt and pepper, a little bit of red onion and cucumber, and that's it. And it's so delicious. I think that's my favorite one. And if I can't find really good fresh raw shrimp, which I can't find if I'm not at the beach, then I will make it with scallops, like very thin sliced scallops.
And just a compliment for you from Laura. She just wanted you to know that your show and your books have inspired her family to learn to cook Mexican food, and they've
Aw,
cooked multiple recipes and loved them all. So,
thank you. Thank you so much. That means so much.
and a few more questions. I know we're coming close to time, and I'm hoping that we can get it. We have a question about, do you have any tips on how to cook tortillas thoroughly without burning them? And this is from Paula, and she's like, hers always tastes doughy.
Of course. So I have a couple of videos on YouTube and on my website about how to make both corn and flour tortillas. And it's all about patience. You want to have a skillet or a pan or a comal that's preheated, but it's preheated at medium heat. And you want to make sure that's preheated so that when you cook the tortillas don't stick. And it's just a matter of patience. You have to, it's like crepes or pancakes. You just have to make them a lot until you get them right. Don't lose patience.
And two more questions. What other chefs inspire you?
So many, so many. I, of course, grew up reading Julia Child and Jack Pepin and Lydia Bastianich. I love Joe Nathan and Claudia Roden. And there are just so many today. And with social media, you can follow so many chefs and so many cooks doing so many amazing things. Francisco Migoya is a fabulous Mexican pastry chef that also specializes in sweets and baking and chocolates. And I love following his things too.
And have you thought about doing a show with another chef from PBS, or maybe maybe the Food
Yeah.
Network?
So yeah. So increasingly, I think that If I can invite people to my kitchen, I'm always doing that. And I love going to other people's kitchens too. So yeah, I absolutely love collaborations, and I will continue to find opportunities to cook with others because I love sharing my kitchen and I love being invited in other kitchens.
And just one last question. Where are all the places that we can watch you or stream your TV shows? Just you said
Of
it at the
course.
beginning, but I would just want
Yeah.
everyone to know.
Absolutely. So if you go to my website, which is patijinich.com, you can if you go to TV show, you will find Patty's Mexican Table in La Frontera, and it will tell you where you can watch all the options. You can watch on pbs.org, you can watch on Amazon Prime. Very soon you're going to be able to watch on Peacock and Pluto. And as far as recipes on my website, I have, I think, over 500 recipes that you guys can just print and use and share. And on social media, I'm at Pati Jinich everywhere. And I love talking to friends. So please connect.